I'm Emily Guy Birken, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit. Because pop culture is still culture, and shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode of Deep Thoughts, my friend Kate Moody will be sharing her thoughts about Buffy the Vampire Slayer with me and my sister, Tracie Guy Decker. Let's dive in.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit. This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people.
So I'm very excited this week to welcome my friend Kate Moody. Kate is a former librarian who, after years in the coal mines of academia, is now on a mission to help smart people stop feeling dumb about money by giving them reliable information via her YouTube, one-on-one coaching, and sundry online educational services. She believes that by getting good people over our everyday financial stressors that eat up so much of our brain space, we can create massive change for the positive, whether that's giving to charity, volunteering, or just spoiling our pets. Kate can help you make money your solution, not your problem. When she wasn't off extolling the virtues of the time value of money, she watched every episode of Buffy, except the body, more times than she can count without the use of a spreadsheet. You can find her on YouTube and Instagram as The Money Librarian, and for extra credit, get her extremely nerdy, humorous weekly emails that will help you grab your Benjamins by the bills at themoneylibrarian.com. So, Kate, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited to have you talk about Buffy, in part because this is a cultural phenomenon that I missed. I'm going to blame it on college. Buffy was at its height when I was in college. I had missed the beginning of it. And so by the time I knew that I was missing something, I was intimidated because there was several seasons in, and I just didn't know how to get started. And it was back in the day where it was going to take some effort for me to get like DVDs of previous seasons. So I know a little bit about it. I saw and was the only person in North America who liked the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
No, me too. Me too.
Okay. So I was familiar with the concept. And I have seen an episode or two. I saw the episode Hush because one of my friends was like, "Oh my God, you have to see this." And it was great.
They were right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know very little about the show. Tracie, what do you know about Buffy?
Yeah, I was a big Buffy fan, but I did not watch Buffy while it was broadcast. When I was living in Chicago, which would have been between 2000 and 2007. At some point, it must have been after 2004 because I met Hillary around then. My friend Hillary was a big Buffy fan and sort of somehow convinced me to borrow the first season. And I was instantly hooked. And much like my Portlandia-esque experience with Battlestar Galactica, I just got like sucked into a black hole of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel too, the spinoff series with David Boreanaz. And yeah, I just loved it. And I remember thinking like in the first season, I went out on a date with someone who was also a Buffy fan. And I remember saying like, it's kind of a weird chastity parable. And he was like, no, because I was still in like the first season where attitudes towards it kind of is a chastity parable in the first season, but attitudes towards sex and sexual pairings change a lot over the series. So anyway, I'm excited to hear some deep thoughts about the series as a whole. I definitely experienced it differently than a lot of Buffy fans because I didn't have to wait. I totally binged it over a matter of weeks. But Kate, that's like my experience with it. What's at stake? Why are you so into Buffy? Why does it matter?
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm super excited to talk about Buffy because I absolutely love this show so much. I had a similar experience to you, Tracie and Emily. I actually loved the movie so much in the 90s that when the TV show came out, I was like, what's this bullshit? I'm not going to watch some TV show. That movie was awesome. And so like, despite the fact that I love the show now, I refused to watch it when it was first on, because I didn't know that it was the same showrunner and creator, Joss Whedon, who had made all of it. So I just thought that it was some money grab by the new WB network. And it was a mid-season replacement, actually, which is why the first season is only 12 episodes long. So like, I didn't watch it when it was first on. I was in college as well when it was on. And then when I graduated from college, I moved away and then came back home after a couple years. And my sister owned all the DVDs. And so this is like, I don't know, 2005-ish. And she was in grad school. So the DVDs were at my parents' house. And I watched them at my parents' house. And I was able to binge them like late, like it had ended at that point. And then I became obsessed and I watched all the DVDs over and over again. And I watched all of the behind the scenes and when they have the writers talking like through the episodes and whatnot to get like as much Buffy as I possibly could. And you know what? It clicked with me, I think, for so many reasons for the same reasons that it clicks with so many people. It's not just a show about high school drama, but there is a lot of all the growing pains that you can really relate to with friends and school and first relationships and whatnot. But if it was just that, that would be boring because I'm no longer in high school, right? And so then you've got the monsters, which is fun, but I wouldn't watch a show just about monsters probably because that would be boring. But the mix of the two had just enough relatable, just enough supernatural, plus it's smart. It is funny. And it's not just either high or lowbrow jokes. It's like this great mix of the two. I've been rewatching it recently, and this joke that I had never clocked before, because it just goes by so fast. They're talking about going to see a movie where a monkey gets into the NHL, and so he's playing on a hockey league. And Xander just goes at one point, oh, is that based on the Chekhov? Like, and it just flew past me during the first 8 times that I watched it. And like, that's a solid joke, you know? But then there's also the references to like Cletus the slack-jawed yokel. And, you know, I could quote the entirety of The Simpsons from seasons 1 through about 14 or so. So it hit me on every level. And then you have the fact that it very much passes the Bechdel test. It's got a strong superheroine, whatever, but strong superhero. And she's not one-dimensional like so many superheroes who just go out and save the world. She's very multidimensional, and I think that's something we can really dig into about it being a feminist show, and actually that creates a very multidimensional character versus so many of the superheroes where it's like they're just some vigilante because something very something that is kind of boring, or not boring, what's the word I'm looking for? Just sort of an overused trope happened, and now they fight bad guys, right? As a vigilante.
The refrigerated woman. We
yes.
actually have talked about that.
Yes, like, you know, who cares? I don't care. And then that's it. That's all they do. They're rich and they fight. Like, that's boring. Buffy cared about her friends. She cared about having a social life. She cared about her relationships, and it was just a really well-rounded show. So I think that's what struck me. And then, you know, I watched it so many times because of all of those layers, because of those jokes that fly past you. There's a lot going on. And so every time you watch it, you kind of get a new take on it. So I want to also say that I have such rose-colored glasses when it comes to this show. I'm like, how can I have critical thoughts about this show? I love it so much. It can do no wrong. And obviously it does a lot wrong, you know, especially looking back on it. So I think there's enough drama, there's enough comedy, there's enough things that are relatable, but there's enough supernatural things. All of this great mix just make it the show that you want to grab onto and just love, 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 love. And Emily, seriously, like, I don't want to, like, there's so many plot points I do not want to discuss because I'm like, oh, but Emily needs to watch the whole show and it'll be ruined for her if she goes and watches the show. And but she
honestly
knows.
Kate, at this point, it's 2023. I think it's her own lookout.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have friends who were obsessed, and so I kind of already I've been exposed to the spoilers, and I don't remember them, so I think you're fine.
Okay. I just, when my husband, when we were first dating many, many years ago, he started watching Buffy because of me. And at one point I mentioned, oh, Angel's a vampire. And he's like, what? Angel's a vampire? I was like, oh my God, you haven't gotten to that yet. Like, come on. That's like, I don't know, episode 8, episode 9.
Yeah, it's pretty fundamental.
Yeah, exactly. So I think maybe that's why I worry that I will ruin it.
I also, I have a tendency to, it's not like I like spoilers, but I don't mind them like other people do, in part because what I like is how you get there. And just because I spend as much time as I do thinking about stories and story construction and stuff like that, that very rarely can I be surprised by a spoiler. Well, very rarely can I be surprised by a story. The only thing I can think of that actually was spoiled for me recently was the ending of Us, the Jordan Peele movie, because I would not have guessed the ending.
That
if
movie
I
was
had
so
not had it
good.
spoiled. Yeah.
I think for Emily too, like, because she's so into story construction, sometimes like having the spoiler in advance allows her to do additional like analysis as she's watching. So
Yeah.
Anyway, suffice it
No
to
worries.
say, don't worry about spoilers.
Okay. Well, and part of the reason too that the show is so good is that there's a joke I heard is Joss Whedon and George R. R. Martin walk into a bar and everyone you love dies. Like, it's kind of Stockholm syndrome because major characters are killed off in the show. Which just kind of raises the stakes in a way that most shows don't dare to do.
Yep. I think that's accurate.
Well, let's start with, can you just give us like just the basic background, like what the story is about and who, like, a couple of the most important characters are?
Oh, all right, sorry. Like, how does one not know? So, all right, the basic premise is that there is one vampire slayer born into each generation, and it's a teenage girl, and she gets these supernatural powers, and she's supposed to go and slay vampires and all kinds of random beasties that are out there. Don't think about it too much. One woman in the entire world, and sure, the Hellmouth is in California. Okay. Fine. And all the beasts come to her instead of being anywhere the Slayer is not. That makes a lot of sense. Anyways, so she's in high school in Sunnydale, California, which is one of those towns where, like, the murder rate is so high, you wonder why anybody moves there anymore. But fine, okay, people move to Sunnydale, California. And she has a, quote, watcher, who is Giles the librarian, who's one of the best characters on TV. Former librarian. So when I was in library science school, there was a lot of Giles love. She's got a librarian watcher who trains her, and he's sort of her mentor and ends up becoming a father figure. Then she also has her friends, Willow and Xander. Willow's the brainy one, Xander's the heart, and they form the quote-unquote Scooby Gang. And every week there's a Monster of the Week, but there are major season arcs. Every single season there is a big bad that they have to fight throughout the season, which I think was also something different about Buffy, because at the time, before really you could binge, there weren't, as far as I'm aware, there weren't a lot of TV shows that had major season arcs the way that Buffy does. And that is the basic premise of the show. But of course, there's a lot of side characters and guest characters and whatnot who support her throughout her time. Most notably is Angel, the aforementioned vampire, who you don't know who's a vampire for the first 8 episodes or so. And then later on, the vampire who supports her is Spike. And in the fandom, there is a huge Angel versus Spike controversy, but everybody should know that Spike is better. So I don't know why there's such controversy.
So is this like Team Edward versus Team Jacob in Twilight kind of thing?
Kinda.
Sort of, except Team Jacob is so much obviously the better team. I don't know why, again, such controversy, because he's not. Anyways, I won't go down that rabbit hole either, but they're very different Yes, you could make that comparison, and people have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, fair enough. I'm suspecting I would be Team Spike, considering the fact that you are so strongly Team Jacob, which is how I was as well. So I'm like, all right, so
Not necessarily. There's I can see why people go Team Angel, but I'm just so weirded out by the 200 and something year old guy being interested in a 15-year-old girl.
Spike's not young.
He's not young either, but at least when he gets together,
he's younger, but he's not young.
But he gets together with a fully formed adult human, whereas Angel is actually attracted to a child.
Yeah. I can't
Like,
I can't argue with you. Yeah. I mean, but she's still like,
she's still super young. Yeah.
If you're hundreds of years old, like, I don't really see the difference between 15 and 20, frankly.
No. And for many years now, we were talking about fanfic before, but like I want the fanfic or some vampires novel where a vampire actually goes out and goes to like retirement communities and tries to date like 80, 90-year-old women.
Because they actually have life experience.
Yes, because they would actually be interesting to somebody who is that old, yes, and not the teenager.
Exactly. Yeah. Spike has sort of a Billy Idol, like,
he's the blonde one, right?
Vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a Billy Idol vibe. In fact, they imply that Billy Idol stole the look from Spike.
Oh, okay. Well, and I don't find David, I don't know.
Boreanaz.
Yeah, that guy. I don't find him that attractive. So, whereas
you might when he was young in Buffy. This is not Bones.
Okay.
He's got a very different vibe than Agent Booth.
And anyway. I honestly, like, when have I ever turned down a pretty face? I mean,
it's
like,
true. You are a sucker for a handsome man.
Oh my God. Like, that is the running theme through Deep Thoughts. It's like, I was like, oh my God, I had such a crush on that actor.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say,
that guy was so hot.
With Spike, like, I don't normally go for blondes, but he could get it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's not natural blonde, too, which I think is part of the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, okay, so let's dig a little deeper. You were like, how can I have critical thoughts about this show that I love? But we invited you to. So where did you go first when you were like, oh, I guess I can?
So I think on the surface level, it's so easy to get into what you were talking about, like the chastity parable and whatnot. So I feel like that has to be talked about, even though it's talked about a lot. So in season 2, Buffy ends up having sex with Angel. She loses her virginity to Angel. And because of the, quote, one moment of true happiness, which, he loses his soul, becomes evil, and goes on a killing spree. Which maybe on the one level, like a lot of people could relate to is, that you're dating somebody and then they kind of take a turn and they're not the person that you thought that they were. Perhaps not on the killing spree thing, but like it's so yuck. Everything about the Angel Buffy like relationship is just yucky to me at this point because he is so old and she is so young. But that's really disturbing. The idea of, first off, that sex is just this perfect moment of happiness thing, and then that because she has sex with him, he's now completely evil and goes on a killing spree, and so then they can never have sex again because a true moment of happiness, and he'll lose his soul. Like, it's just a dumb plot line, and it looks especially bad from a 2023 perspective. Like, I don't think it ever really held much water, but ugh.
Yeah, the conceit is that he has been cursed by Roma people, actually, because he turned one of their young women into a vampire, and so he's been cursed. Okay, that's and the curse was that. Well, the curse was that they gave him his soul back, so that he could like sit with the like evilness that he had done and actually like have a conscience, because they gave him his soul back, because vampires lose their soul. But the curse will be broken if he ever experiences happiness, and then he and Buffy, no, we mustn't for like a season and a half, and then they finally succumb to hormones and have sex, and he has that perfect moment, and then, as Kate says,
I got so many thoughts.
I want to hear all of them because I just like at this point I just fast forward through the Buffy Angels bits. I'm like, oh God, I'm so tired of you two.
So at this point, she's what, 16?
More or less.
That's my first thought.
I think maybe 16, 17.
Yeah, 16, 17, somewhere in that
She's
range.
a junior in high school.
Gross.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just ew. Okay. So he has a soul, so he has a conscience. So you'd think he'd be like, yeah, I can wait a few years, which is going to feel like a finger snap until she's at least a full adult. So that's my first thought. Ew. Second, like, that's perfect happiness. Like,
Yeah, apparently orgasm is perfect happiness, according to Joss Whedon.
I'm not okay with that.
No.
Well, and like, yeah. Well, so we were talking a little bit before about how Tracie and I right now are a little obsessed with Good Omens. And one of the things that I have really appreciated is the asexual community talking about having some like ace representation in the love story between Aziraphale and Crowley. And just thinking like, if you're describing orgasm as perfect happiness, it cuts off so much human experience that is like true joy, like watching the sunrise with someone you love. I mean, like, that doesn't make any sense. And it would actually make more sense thinking story construction wise, where he'd be like, no, we can't. But then they have this like perfect day and watch the sunset together. I don't know, something. And I don't know if he can be in daylight or not. I don't know if it's that kind of vampire. Okay.
No, they get loosey-goosey with the daylight as the seasons go on, but
yeah.
Gotcha.
As it's convenient,
but yeah, so like, if he was thinking that it was like, that would be perfect happiness if I experience orgasm with someone I love, but it actually ends up being like, oh my goodness, we had a perfect day together, and then he turns evil. That could actually be really interesting. Like, what you think perfect happiness is, and it actually is something completely different. It's just so reductive. It's a very reductive, very heteronormative view of what joy is. So yeah, I can see why you fast forward through that. And then to then have that be on Buffy, for her to feel bad and responsible for like, and now he's on a killing spree.
And like, he doesn't just kill like, disposable crew members. He kills people we care about.
In like horrible ways. That
in like the one I'm thinking of when he kills Jenny, that's her name, right? Jenny. Like, he doesn't even feed. He just kills her for the sheer
and then uses her body to really torture Giles, who we also love. So not only do we lose one character, but now we watch another character that we love go through a terrible situation and heartbreak. There, it's yucky. I love your idea, Emily, though. Like, that would have been so much better and so more meaningful. And it really does seem like, I think Joss Whedon was in his late 20s, early 30s at this point. And like, what does that say about him, that in his mind he was like, well, this is the best thing ever. That's the only time I'm happy.
Well, that to me is like, that speaks to how few like non-white male cisgendered heterosexual men are in the writing room.
You wonder.
Yeah. Actually, could we talk a little bit about Joss Whedon? Because some stuff has come to light recently. Yeah. So I feel like, because I missed Buffy, I did watch, he was, now I can't think of the name of it.
He did Firefly.
Firefly. Yeah, that's so he did Firefly, and like there were a couple others. And I have some complicated feelings about Firefly as well, which at some point, Tracie, you and I should talk about it. But I don't feel the same kind of level of betrayal that I know like my best friend who loved Buffy and who loved Firefly felt. But I know he's kind of come out as like the kind of misogynist who uses feminism as a shield sort of thing. Maybe I'm a little off on that, but like I know some of the things that were happening on the set with Buffy was a little gross. Kate, do you have any comments about that?
So I tried to do some research on this, and it's super hard because Joss Whedon is now a very powerful man in Hollywood. Like a very powerful man. So I think that it could be something where there's just a lot of people not talking enough about what he's done because they're worried for their careers, and understandably so. So like, yeah, and it sounds like Charisma Carpenter got fired from Angel because she got pregnant. It sounds like he created sort of a toxic work environment. He would yell at people. And there's some things that they're like, oh, he can't be in a room alone with Michelle or with Sarah or something like that. But nobody is really willing to say he did this or he said this specifically, other than Charisma Carpenter, who said, I got fired because I was pregnant. And as shitty a move as that is, at the time, I mean, I don't know if there was legal recourse for her or whatnot. I mean, it sounds like he's just an asshole, and I think he thinks he's a feminist. I really do. I think he, on a logical sort of conscious level, he says he believes that women are just as smart, just as strong as men. But I don't think he's really done any work to sort of figure out more about feminism and what it takes to help women. And so then on his subconscious level, the same part of him that thought, oh yeah, sex is the perfect moment of happiness, also treats women that way. And so it seems like he's just an asshole and a powerful man and a guy who makes a lot of money for Hollywood. Therefore, he's going to have a lot of power. As long as he keeps making money for Hollywood, they're not going to turn him in. And, you know, if he's an asshole, then that just makes him a jerk. But if he has done things, then he needs to be like brought to jail. And it's just, as far as I was able to find, he hasn't done anything criminal. And then there's also a lot of allegations that he was having extramarital affairs and that he was having affairs with people who worked under him.
Yeah,
you know, which
that's what I had.
Yeah,
heard.
which that then creates bad power dynamics. Like that is that maybe is,
especially in it. Yeah, especially if it's already a toxic work environment.
Yeah. So
it's the power dynamics is part of what I'm reacting to in the idea that like what I've heard that makes me feel like maybe not intentionally, but using feminism as a shield to cover like this kind of latent misogyny. Part of my complicated feelings about Firefly have to do with the episode where there is a young woman who it turns out is a scam artist, but she pretends to be this innocent young woman who is married to
Mrs.
Malcolm.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Yes. And the ways that that is excused, and I cannot think of his name, the Leaf on the Wind guy.
Wash.
Yeah, Wash is saying is trying to excuse it to his wife, saying like, "Hey, I've been to a place where they juggle geese. You know, like this is just culture." And that level of excusing the power dynamic problem in Firefly, similarly with the treatment of the companion whose name I've forgotten,
Inara.
Yes, Inara. So, and then the power dynamic between a 200-year-old vampire and a 17-year-old girl, especially this sense that, okay, because she has had sex with him, he has now become a monster. And so putting the onus, this responsibility on her in a way that I feel like often is what you get where like, oh, well, you know, she was dressing provocatively. She knew what she was in for.
It turns her into a sort of vagina dentata, you know, like a sort of like, I mean, it doesn't emasculate him. In some ways, the opposite in a machismo kind of understanding of masculinity, but it does transform him in a way that is kind of against his will. It's like he didn't choose, like he would have chosen to keep the soul, we are led to believe, I think.
Yeah.
And so your point about her sexuality is a weapon when in fact she's a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah. Who's in love with her boyfriend who
should know better. very much.
Well, and particularly like once you've lived 200 years, is it really that much to wait at least until she's
That's like a week.
legal adult? Yeah.
Yeah.
It would feel like nothing.
Yeah, and then also,
So,
I was going to say also that there's some gender stuff too. Like a later boyfriend is an army guy, and he views himself as a very strong and masculine guy, and he feels very emasculated by having a girlfriend who's stronger than him. And he feels like he should be able to keep up with her and whatnot. And it's like, she is a superhero. She's literally a superhero. There's nothing you can do to keep up with her. And they're really sympathetic to his perspective. And it's like, no, his perspective should be, my girlfriend's a superhero and she deigns to date me. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Like that should be his perspective on this too. So there's
well,
a lot of
you
things.
wouldn't be sympathetic to someone who was like, my girlfriend shouldn't be smarter than me.
Yeah.
You know, like there's that is not something that you could be sympathetic to, or at least one would hope not.
No.
But the idea, and like part of what's interesting and exciting about the idea of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is that you've got someone who people underestimate because she's a blonde cheerleader in high school who's named Buffy. So you think of her as a marshmallow at best. And she can kick ass. Like that's awesome. Like that's this kind of like reclaiming of power, but it like gives with one hand and takes away with the other by being sympathetic to this, you know, soldier who's like, well, she shouldn't be stronger than me.
Yeah.
And not letting her have typical high school, like, I mean, you know, losing your virginity at 17 can be fraught, but not that kind of fraught.
Right. It doesn't result in the death of one of your teachers. Right.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you're doing it right anyway.
Wouldn't think so.
It feels like it's oftentimes we'll see that with media with strong female characters where it wants to have its cake and eat it too. So like, yeah, look, you've got this strong female character, but you know what? Let's punish her for having sex. You know, we've got the strong female character, but you know what? It's still kind of weird that she can kick this army man's ass. So let's put her back in her place because she's just a blonde teenage cheerleader.
Yeah, and like what I was saying before, like part of the reason the gender makes her a more interesting character is because the world views her as somebody who should be a marshmallow. She also kind of views herself that way. So I think she second guesses herself a lot more than any other superhero would do, which is kind of nice to see every once in a while. I mean, sometimes you're like, why is everybody, Buffy says, guys, I had this dream. I think it's a prophetic dream. I think we should do this. And they're like, whatever, you don't know anything, Buffy. And she's like, okay, I don't know anything. Like, no, you're a superhero. to follow the prophetic dream. But being humble on occasion is a nice thing to see in a superhero because it makes them not just a vigilante. It makes them somebody who is actually responsible and will take other people's viewpoints into perspective, which she does a lot because she has that group with her.
You're making me think about the episode where I don't remember what happens, but something happens so she can hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, I forget.
Where she's like reading minds.
Yeah, it's, you know, some spell or some.
Something supernatural happens. And so Buffy can like hear people's thoughts. She can read minds. And at first it's just like people close to her, but eventually it's like all of humanity and it completely overwhelms her. But I'm thinking about that because like Kate, as you're talking about sort of Buffy's humility and sort of second guessing herself, like there's that moment where she's confronts Giles and he's like judging her for her fashion. And she can hear it and she chuckles about it. Like he thinks something like she would strap live cats to her feet if somebody told her that was something along those lines. Yeah. And she's just sort of like chuckles and she's like not offended, you know, it's just sort of like how they interact, which is interesting. And then also interesting in what you're saying right now about part of the strength of the character for us as viewers. We see that in that episode as well, because she becomes completely overwhelmed by the despair and the pain of humanity that we're all walking around with in our heads all the time once she's able to feel it. Like they have to break the spell because she cannot function with the weight of everyone's thoughts, and specifically their despair and pain, which I think is a really just interesting and satisfying kind of take on the superhero-ness and why she does it. You know, I mean, Batman does what he does because of pain, but it's his own pain.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where I'm going with this, but the way you were talking made me think about that specific episode as kind of epitomizing what you're getting at here.
That idea actually comes back in season 6 when Willow tries to end the world because she gets so in tune with everyone's emotions. She just says, there's so much pain, I have to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's so in depth. And I have a particular love for season 6, which is like people either love it or hate it. I love it. It gets super dark, so I can understand why it's not your jam, because it is different than a lot of the other seasons. This is what happened when they moved to another network. So there's also a lot more sex, which makes it better, in my opinion. Because it's interesting, though. It's not just sex for titillation. It actually is character development for both characters involved and actually for the rest of the cast. It is a major plot point. And so it's not just to have something sexy on the screen. It really is part of the story. And something else in season 6 that I love is that unlike all the other seasons, the bad guy is just a bunch of incels as we view them now.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the time that wasn't a phrase, but when you look at it now, it's like, oh my God, yeah, these guys, like, they're just nerds who can't connect with women, and because of that they want power. And that's one of their top lines. Is like, they actually say it in one of the first few episodes. They say, what are we doing this for? Chicks, chicks, chicks. And just, although most of them don't want to actually hurt anyone, they end up going down that path in the pursuit of power. And so season 6 is all about like unearned power and what happens when people get that. And I mean, the big bad is them, and then Dark Willow too, because she goes evil, because Joss Whedon is evil and does something evil, and we can discuss the evilness of what happens, of why Willow goes off the deep end. But I think that was really interesting, though, the fact that these characters were incels before that was a thing.
Something that is resonating for me, talking about the fact that at least early on, it sounds like Buffy was second guessing herself and that humility. I've mentioned to Tracie before, I can't remember if on Deep Thoughts or not. One of the odd and unexpected like role models for me growing up was Rose from Golden Girls.
Okay. I'm listening.
And that was because, as played by Betty White, and this was partially her shtick, everyone underestimated her because she was this adorable, pretty blonde who said things that sounded kind of stupid. And she had no problem whatsoever with people underestimating her, because when she needed it, she could come through with this like razor sharp, incisive, like cut right to the heart comments that she would then just say. And like, you could never be sure if she really knew how devastating what the comment was, or if she really was as dumb as she was pretending to be. The reason I'm bringing this up is I'm thinking about Buffy and like second guessing herself, and part of what I appreciated about Rose and what I took from it, because I have also experienced being underestimated my entire life, was not to be offended by it. Because it doesn't matter what the other person thinks of me. What matters is like, I know how smart I am. I know that I am capable. And I know when I need it, I've got that wit there that I can like say that devastating thing and then smile nice and pretty and let them wonder, like, did she really mean that? I don't know if she meant it or not, but I'm bleeding. So I'm thinking about that with Buffy, based on what you're talking about here, is you get that a little bit of the humility, and there is something great about that in a superhero, but it would also be great if, you know, she could be like, okay, that's fine, underestimate me, I'm going to kick your ass when it's necessary, and get that I got from Rose, which is like, it doesn't matter if you underestimate me, I can do what needs to be done, and you'll never know what's in my head, and I know my own worth. And by kind of having that second guessing, like, oh yeah, I guess I don't know anything because I don't know if it's a prophetic dream or not. Like it's that same like give with one hand and take away with the other that I was mentioning.
It does. And also, she always turned out to be right. You know, like she always got the big bad in the end. Like, I mean, well, there's a bit in the middle where she's whatever. But but I think, you know, she sort of second guesses herself, but then is proven to be right. So it's like,
so does she like kind of gain that confidence over time?
I think she does. Like Buffy season 1, sometimes there'll be 1 or 2 vampires and she's like, oh God, what am I going to do? Oh no, 2 whole vampires. And then by the time you get to like season 4, season 5, she's like, whatever, I got 3 vampires in an alley. Let's just do this thing. And I think she does gain that self-confidence and
and that makes sense for a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I mean, that's reasonable.
It is.
And that's, I mean, Rose was a, 50, 60 something woman. So like, that's also the difference. Like you learn like, oh, it's totally fine. Go ahead and underestimate me. I don't care.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
And she is worried. Like in season 5, she becomes very worried that she's becoming too hard and is becoming incapable of love. Like what other superhero has mentioned that kind of thing, that they were worried that they're losing their humanity like that. I think she's just such a more well-rounded character because she's a woman.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's interesting too. Emily and I often talk about sort of the not like other girls feminism that we were offered. And in some ways, at the start, at least, Buffy is definitely that, right? Like one in a generation, right? Like it couldn't be clearer, not like other girls. And it's interesting, and we're running out of time and we don't have time to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like the end of the whole series arc, the Scooby Gang does some stuff to make it so that all of the potential slayers come into their power. So that instead of just one, there are dozens, if not hundreds around the world, which is the way it should have been in the beginning because there are hundreds of vampires.
It just makes so much more sense.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about that now as we are talking about Buffy as a superhero, about sort of the give and take of the feminism that has misogyny lurking in the background, all of the kind of back and forth that we've been talking about, the three of us today, with that story arc of the overarching series. And I'm wondering, like, Kate, does that help kind of redeem it? Did that feel like, at the time I watched it, which was after it was all done, I can remember being like excited and also like, I don't know, a little conflicted. Like I wasn't sure how to feel about this story arc of the multiple slayers, which is because I'd been trained to believe there can be only one, right? Like Highlander or something.
I loved that arc. I thought it was great because she's not hoarding the power for herself. She actually wants to share all their power. And when you're saying not like other girls, I just saw a meme on somewhere and it said, I am like other girls because other girls are awesome. Yeah, man, that's right there.
I'm also thinking about the trauma of being the only one.
Which they delve into the loneliness
they really do.
Of being the leader and how hard it is on her.
Yeah.
Too. Like
the most recent Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, I actually really appreciated because it was the first Batman iteration I've ever seen where Bruce Wayne was appropriately fucked up. Like, I mean, he is like, I'm sorry, the guy has mental health problems and you don't see it. And he's just a dude who like went through trauma and has a lot of money and is afraid of bats. And so like actually having all that power and being alone and having to deal with that and having your first boyfriend going on a killing spree after you have sex for the first time, like that's a lot to put on a person,
and your friends are in danger just for being your friend, just because they know, because then they become targets.
So that's like, there is something really welcome about saying like, okay, it's tough on these other potentials, but at least they'll all have each other and we can work together and it's not just, I'm not just going to be this lonely weirdo handling things by myself.
There's just so much with this show. Like, you could easily do an episode on like every season of the stuff that's brought up. Like, there's so much this show explores, and it does so, again, I mean, not perfectly, and there's some missteps, but it's really, really interesting. And it reminds me, actually, I used to work with a sociologist who studied ghost hunters. Follow me here. I swear there's a through line. Okay.
Wow. That sounds really cool.
It was. And something interesting he found was that with ghost hunters, even though they thought of themselves as like very countercultural and outside the box thinkers and whatnot, because they were looking for stuff that everybody else thought wasn't true, gender roles they would still conform to gender roles, that the women were supposed to be the emotional ones. Like, I feel that this area over here is X, Y, and Z. And the men were supposed to be the ones using technology. And so if a man were to come into the house and say like, ooh, this feels cold over here, and like, something bad happened, people would say, oh, well, you can't be right. That's not right. That's your guy. You can't actually feel that way. And it's just, I think that Buffy manages it gets past those sort of gender roles. I'm trying to think of the combination here. It's, even though it is outside of the box, like, I feel like it blends enough sort of masculine and feminine ideas. I think I lost my initial shoot. This is what happens when I get too caffeinated.
You're talking about ghosts?
Yeah.
Ghost hunters and traditional
Ghost
gender
hunters
roles.
and traditional gender roles. And I just think Buffy just reminds me of that, because so many of the traditional gender roles they get past it. And it's just more about people. To me, it's more about people. Yeah.
I mean, I think Joss Whedon's original vision, at least as I understood it, was to subvert that, right? Like the vampire, the like scary male and somehow sexy vampire, like going in for the vulnerable and weak victim, who then turns around and, kills him. The idea that the monster sort of trailing the vulnerable blonde teenager into the alley, and one of them's going to end up dead, and it ain't the teenager. Like that subversion was kind of what I think Joss was finding interesting about the concept in the beginning. And I think the concept is really fascinating and resonant and exciting, especially for those of us who have been coded as that vulnerable, weak creature.
Yeah, I think the opening scene looks like a blonde girl or a blonde woman in a schoolgirl outfit, and this guy sneak into a school, and it seems like he's going to attack her, like she's a victim, and then she turns around and she's a vampire and she kills him. And by actually taking, like, you're like, oh, I know this scene, I've seen this scene 1,000 times, and it kind of hits you. Like, it's well done. So from that point on, you kind of think like, oh, you don't know what this show's going to serve you. Like, expect to be surprised.
Yeah. It subverts. And I think something that's interesting is the way that, on reflection, looking back, there was subversion, and also there were things that were true to form, were true to societal expectations, like baked into the subversion. That's what I'm hearing.
I hate that so much gets boiled down to just gender stuff, because there's so much that goes on in this show. Like, we haven't even talked about the awesomeness that is Willow and Tara. And how it manages to be the whitest town in all of California.
I'm also thinking about, like, I mean, there's gender, and then, when I was watching it initially and thinking that it was a chastity parable, and then much, much later when we realized that Darla was dying of syphilis because she was a prostitute, and they like restore her human body, but it's still being ravaged by syphilis. Like what are the messages going on there about Darla, who is the vampire who turned angel in the first place? Like, there's a lot. There's a lot.
And there's also the terribleness that is David Boreanaz trying to do an Irish accent. It's like, could they not hire a coach or something? It's truly awful. But God bless him, he's pretty, so.
He is very pretty. He's very pretty. All right. Well, we have been talking for a long time, and I know you're right. We could keep going, like season by season, episode by episode. I'm sure there are a few episodes that could take multiple episodes.
The musical episode,
probably.
Genius.
Yes. Once More with Feeling, so genius. I think about that one, the song when Buffy's like, "I think I was in heaven." Oh, it breaks my heart.
It's one of the many times
Anyway, okay,
your heart gets
so-
broken in the show.
It's true. It's true. So we talked about a lot. We talked about the awesomeness of Buffy as a superhero, which is a framing that Kate brought specifically that I think is really beautiful. If we put Buffy into that kind of pantheon of superheroes, then we can truly see what is unique about her. There are other female superheroes, but they're not like Buffy. There's something like uniquely human about Buffy's approach to her superheroinism, which I don't know that she would have even used that word, but I like it that you did. We also talked about the just plain yuckiness of the Buffy Angel story arc of this hundreds of year old vampire who is dating a teenager. And then after he has one moment of true happiness, i.e. an orgasm, he turns evil and goes on a killing spree. Yuck. On many levels, yuck. Many levels, yuck. Let's see. We talked about the not like other girls feminism that then the series as a whole kind of rejects by bringing all potential slayers into their full power so that it is like other girls because other girls are awesome. And we talked about the ways in which Buffy is more fully formed than many of our strong female protagonists, that this show absolutely passes the Bechdel test with flying colors. I'm forgetting things. What are the other highlights we want to make sure we resurface?
Well, we talked about Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon, a powerful man in Hollywood who, at best, is an asshole and at worst, an abuser.
Which is too bad because I love his work. And I mean,
Yeah.
My husband's a professor of history, and one of his historical axioms is to study history is to see all of your heroes die, because you realize that everyone who you love, probably an asshole in some other part of their life, who you would really disagree with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and to that point, I think, Kate, your point that the big bad in, is it season 6 is incels and Shadow Willow. So like before we had the word for incels, someone in the writer's room was like, this is a problem. These dudes are dangerous. And also that dude was dangerous. that dude at the head of this writer's room, or I don't know.
Actually,
If
I
he's still
think at
writing
that point it was taken over by one of the women writers on the show.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
can't remember which one. I think he was too busy doing other stuff. So that's also an interesting point. Like, the woman writer was saying that these guys are dangerous. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Em, did I forget anything you want to make sure that we lift up?
Apparently Team Spike is correct.
Yes, it is accurate. As
objectively correct.
National Treasure Stacey Abrams said, she was like, Angel was the guy that Buffy needed when she needed that support, but like Spike is the guy that she needed when she was a real fully formed human being. I'm sure I'm butchering her quote, but I just love that Stacey Abrams knows Buffy so much.
Yeah.
I've read one of Stacey Abrams's romance novels.
Are they good?
She's legit.
Oh, I haven't read any of hers yet.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
You know, it is interesting on that point that like Angel lost his soul. Spike went through a lot of trouble to reclaim his soul in order to be worthy of Buffy.
I mean, it's a very toxic relationship.
Alone.
Let's not mince words.
It is very toxic, but
also it's still better than Angel. And Emily, you got to watch all of it. It's streaming on Hulu. Girl, so good.
I still have to catch up on Doctor Who because I missed all of that too. So that's next to my queue of
both and both and
okay, both and.
All right. Well, this was so much fun. Kate Moody, thank you for joining us. As a reminder to our listeners, you can find Kate at themoneylibrarian.com, and we will put a link to that in the show notes so that you can find
Thank you guys so much for having me, by the way. This is fun.
Thank you for coming. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
So much fun. Emily, our next episode, I'm pretty sure that you're going to bring me something.
I am, yes. Next episode, we're going to be talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the Gene Wilder.
The Gene Wilder
version.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Sometimes, like, I don't know if I'm like in a spooky mood, I'll have that song from the scary bit, like, is it raining? Is it snowing? Is a hurricane a blowing? I don't know why, but it's in my head.
Quite a bit of my poetry knowledge comes from that film and Gene Wilder's.
So I'll look forward to talking about all of those deaths on a tour of a chocolate factory.
Sounds good.
Until then.
Hey, podcast listener. Yeah, you. A number of folks have been reaching out to us privately with their own memories or deep thoughts about our deep thoughts. Aaron told me that our brief conversation about poltergeist in the Ghostbusters episode brought back some scary childhood memories. Marion, hi Mom, pointed out that Fred Savage's dad in The Princess Bride was probably at work and that we were maybe overthinking that idea. Jake pointed out to us that we had completely missed the negative and potentially harmful stereotypes of Roma people that underlie Robin Hood and Little John's cross-dressing as fortune tellers in Disney's Robin Hood. We want to hear what you're thinking, but I bet other listeners do too. We have a forum feature on our website at guygirlsmedia.com. Come join the conversation. I'll put the link in the show notes. Come on over. Let us know. What did we miss? What surprised you? Did we inspire any deep thoughts for you? Be in touch. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?